Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Camerascore, where we discuss all things media. And today we're talking about another sci-fi film, and you know how I feel about sci-fi. Let's get right back into it. Today we're talking about Ryan Gosling, or I don't know if it's his, but Hail Mary. Now this film, on the surface, the planet is dying, another facing apocalypse scenario. But how do they execute it? Is it different enough to be interesting? Let's find out. Let's first start with the positives.
Everything on this planet will go extinct.
You'll find a solution.
You are my solution.
I put the knot in astronaut. I've never done anything. I've never done a space. I can't even moonwalk.
So to begin, much like Interstellar, much like The Martian, much like other sci-fi mainstays, the cinematography is just immaculate here. The colors, the planets, the worlds, the galaxies, the pseudoscience, which we'll get into later, the way they display it is all very, very colorful, very interesting, very bright, and looks amazing throughout the entirety of the film. I cannot rave enough about this. As a sci-fi fan, this is what I'm here for. This is meant to be seen in huge screen formats, or if you got an LED light strip that syncs to colors like I do, you already know. Amazing work from that. Another thing is the performances. I don't want to spoil too much of this film, but let's just say this film on the surface is a save the planet, race to outer space interstellar film. But in practice and application, it's really a buddy drama, a friendship story, a story about connecting with other people and realizing that you're not so alone even though you're so far from home. It is honestly surprising the way that they carried this film out and how heartwarming it was and how much I cared for the characters, so few as they were. It was honestly, like I said, so surprising. I thought we were in for an Interstellar ripoff or another attempt to just scientifically maybe time travel or something like that where it elevates the stakes to save the planet that you're from. But they took this on a completely different route. Friendship. What? Who would have thought that this would be the case? I definitely didn't. I only watched part of the trailers. I didn't really know what I was in store for. But to see that it becomes this heartwarming tale of becoming friends with someone who's also the last of their kind out in space, and essentially realizing you're both weird and quirky in the same ways, and translating language and then forming a connection based on those things and wanting both characters to survive to see the end. Honestly, amazing work on that front. Another thing is the special effects specifically. Now, when you're dealing with these different planets and potentially other races, it definitely makes it a heightened requirement that you have to have in order to make sure that you're not ruining that suspension of disbelief. This interaction with other alien species is very crucial to this plot. And if it was done incorrectly, then you kind of would be taken out of it a la Alien Swarm style. If you've seen that, you kind of know. You know, the aliens were not looking the greatest. But here, they do it masterfully. Albeit there's not much interaction, but the interaction that is there looks really good. I was watching this film like, dang, I really believe that he's in there with this other individual and that this individual is actually taking up space and leaving a mark on the world. That is the biggest thing, those interactions you have. If you touch here and the CG is not exactly there, then it kind of ruins the immersion and you kind of get sucked out of the story. That definitely did not happen. Another great thing, shout out to the stunt riggers for simulating this lack of gravity so exceptionally well. My assumption is they did something vertically, suspension wire harness, do a little bit more research into the BTS for that. But in that way that they've done it, it looks immaculate here. You really believe that he's in outer space, that he's suspended amongst the stars, and that there's this wonderful galaxy outside of our own that he is currently inhabiting. I think they executed that so well. There's not a single point in this film where I didn't believe that he was in space or I didn't believe that he was interacting with another planet. Really, really solid work here. But with that, we get into the negatives.
It's now or never.
So there aren't many negatives in this film, but the biggest ones have to do with the scientific implications. This problem spans the entirety of the first, I don't want to say half, maybe third of the film. The thing is, when you choose something that's sci-fi, already you're activating the nerds. They get ready, they get active. But then you have to kind of cater to general audiences as well. And this film has a little bit of that crisis going on. They try and go too nerdy at the start. There's too much explanation, too many scientific principles lumping in the beginning and explaining to you that don't necessarily drive too much of the central buddy and friendship plot as much as I think they would like it to. There's a lot of scientific explanations that, as someone who studied aerospace myself, I'm like, you just put basic formulas up there and you just started writing things. Cool. And then even people that have studied biochemistry or just chemistry for that matter, the way that he's analyzing these samples, I'm like, there's just no way. This experimentation, the creation of a whole language with an alien species, that's an entire field of study in itself. If it was that simple, we could just translate everything animals say into human language. It's not that easy. Spoiler alert. And that's not to harp on it too much, but it's just when you spend this much time on nerdy stuff, you gotta get it right. They could have done without all of that, and this is coming from a nerd. I really feel like the pacing on this film is just not where it needs to be. They spent so much time in this early act of it that I can see people zoning out, falling asleep even. But the central part of the film going to the end is good. But then the pacing rears its ugly head once again. This film has like 3 climaxes. I thought it was over like 3 times. They just keep bringing you here, then they bring you back. Then it's almost over and he's almost dead, but then he's back. But wait, is he going back home? Wait, no, he has to go save his buddy and he's back. I understand this is based off a book, and people who've read the book probably enjoy how much of the book they've covered in this. But you gotta cut some things out. There were so many incidents that he's almost dead and they're almost gonna do it. That does give you that drama in the story, but at the same time, it wasn't all necessary. Some of it they could have cut out. They could have streamlined this entire plot. And another big sign of something having poor pacing, I definitely checked the time while watching this movie, at least twice. Now that's not to say I was completely bored and wanted to leave, but if you can feel the plot dragging along, then it's quite simply dragging along. They could have cut so much of that early science and just skipped straight to him going out into space. And a lot of the rationale for the things they do, using the very thing eating your son as a fuel source. I don't know what government entity would greenlight such a thing, but not anyone in this reality. I'm sorry, that is just irresponsible in the basis of forms. But hey, I'm not a scientist. Maybe they would. Who knows? But the point is, they spend so much time creating these plot points and creating the threat. Something is eating the planet. We need to go out there, figure out what it is, and stop it. Boom. Use regular fuel. You don't have to use the organism. You don't need all these explanations of the scientists and that. I do think his lack of deciding to go out there is an important plot point, but at the same time, they could have streamlined that as well. It all kind of leaves you feeling like they could have shortened so much of this movie. And again, if you're a book reader, you probably loved all that. But I haven't read the books. I just watched the film, and I feel like it was far too long. But that being said, it was still a genuinely enjoyable experience that I would recommend people to see. But going to it with the mindset, knowing that this airs more on the nerdy side, while still not necessarily getting the nerdy stuff correct. But that being said, I'm just here for the camera score. And for this film, I could still solidly give it an 8 out of 10. I think they did so much right here. The cinematography, the characters, the care put into them, and just the way you connect with these two people in this very heartwarming story of friendship for weirdos. Because that's what they are in their species at the end of the day. But I will say the pacing and some of the nerdy aspects they spend way too much time on, as well as things that they just could have cut entirely, do take away from it. But I still would recommend to watch this film. Now, is this me being a biased sci-fi fan? Potentially. I'm not above admitting that, but I still think this is worth a watch. You let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys next week at 5 p.m.